Naomi Scarson, set the tote down and keep your hands clear.
These are pain patients, not statistics.
The Oxycodone 30 milligram ordering volume was off the chart.
Dr. Naomi Scarson operated without meaningful oversight for 4 years as a licensed pharmacist and pharmacy owner in Texas. 340,000 oxycodone tablets later, the DEA came to collect.
People came to me because everyone else treated them like criminals, and I
Cash
do need help.
just kept moving through this back
You can
door.
call it a pattern, but I call it...
She would not fill another prescription. Within 72 hours, DEA agents would seize Vantage Pharmacy's dispensing records, its distributor invoices, its patient profiles, and every hard drive inside the building. 340,000 tablets, 4 years. One woman with a Texas pharmacist license and a DEA registration she had come to treat as a business asset rather than an obligation. The federal case that ended in a 12-year sentence had already been documented, in full, in ordering data the agency held before it ever opened a formal file on her. Before we go any further, I have to ask, how much of your daily safety do you assume is being protected by professionals doing their jobs correctly? The pharmacist counting your pills, the doctor signing your prescription, the clerk who processes the paperwork. Drop your answer in the comments. And if this channel is new to you, hit subscribe. We cover cases like this every single week, and this one gets worse the further in you go. Naomi Elizabeth Scarson was born in September of 1976 in Amarillo, Texas, the second of 3 daughters born to a middle school science teacher and a hospital respiratory therapist. The Scarson household on Beecher Lane sat 2 blocks from a Walgreens where her mother filled prescriptions after 12-hour shifts at Baptist St. Anthony's Hospital. And it was in that Walgreens, on a folding stool behind the counter at age 11, that Naomi first watched a pharmacist read a prescription, count tablets into a tray, and hand a small white bag to a stranger. She would tell the same story in every professional bio she ever wrote. The pharmacist, she said, was the last person between a doctor's decision and a patient's body. She graduated from Amarillo High School in 1994 with grades in the top 8% of her class and a National Honor Society pin she kept on her graduation cap. She enrolled that fall at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, entering the pre-pharmacy program and paying her way through the first 2 years with a combination of a partial academic scholarship and 28 hours a week at a University Medical Center pharmacy filling routine prescriptions for a starting wage of $6.50 an hour. She was admitted to the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center School of Pharmacy in 1996. Her academic file described her as, quote, focused, detail-oriented, and unusually deliberate for a student her age. She graduated with her Doctor of Pharmacy degree in the spring of 2000, passed the North American Pharmacist Licensure examination on her first attempt, and was issued Texas Pharmacist License Number 048817 in July of that year. She was 23 years old. Her first job as a licensed pharmacist was at a chain retail location in Northwest Dallas, at a starting salary of $71,000 a year. Her supervising pharmacist described her, in her 12-month review, as, quote, exceptionally reliable, showing strong aptitude for controlled substance record-keeping and patient counseling, and noted that she was, quote, the kind of pharmacist who reads the DEA guidance before she is asked to. She was promoted to pharmacy manager at the same store in 2003 and moved to a higher volume location in Plano in 2005. She married Kyle Robert Scarson, an insurance underwriter, in a small ceremony in Fredericksburg in 2004. They bought a 3-bedroom brick house on a cul-de-sac in the Dallas suburb of McKinney in 2007. Their daughter Emma was born in 2008, her son Grant in 2010. By 2013, Naomi Scarson had been a licensed pharmacist for 13 years and a pharmacy manager for a decade. She had never been the subject of a state board complaint, a DEA inquiry, a distributor audit finding, or an internal corporate discipline notice. In the spring of 2014, she resigned from her chain position, cashed out a Roth account, took a small business administration loan against the equity in the McKinney house, and signed a commercial lease on a 1,400 square foot storefront in a strip center off a state highway in the outer suburbs. Vantage Pharmacy opened for business on the 17th of September, 2014. She was 37 years old, and she had, on paper, become exactly the pharmacist her mother had taken her to see when she was 11. To understand what Naomi Scarson did, and how she did it for so long, you have to understand the structure she operated inside. In the United States, the distribution of Schedule II controlled substances, including oxycodone, is governed by a closed regulatory system. Manufacturers sell to distributors. Distributors sell to registered pharmacies. Pharmacies dispense to patients holding valid prescriptions from registered prescribers. Every transaction is documented, tracked, and reported to the Drug Enforcement Administration under registration numbers issued individually to each participant. The pharmacist, at the point of dispensing, is not a passive fulfillment agent. Federal law places on the pharmacist a specific, non-delegable duty. Under Title 21 of the Code of Federal Regulations, a prescription for a controlled substance is only lawfully filled if it is issued for a legitimate medical purpose by a practitioner acting in the usual course of professional practice, and the corresponding responsibility for that determination rests on the pharmacist who fills it. The pharmacist is not permitted to fill a prescription she has reason to believe is not legitimate. The DEA calls this the corresponding responsibility doctrine. Every pharmacist in America is trained on it. Every pharmacy law examination in every state tests on it. The red flags a pharmacist is required to notice are cataloged in writing, in DEA guidance documents, in state board bulletins, and in continuing education modules that licensed pharmacists must complete on a recurring cycle. Prescriptions written by a prescriber whose patient volume exceeds any medical plausibility. Patient address is geographically distant from the pharmacy in a way that has no legitimate explanation. Cash payment for high-quantity Schedule II prescriptions. Patients presenting in ways inconsistent with the diagnosis on the prescription. Combinations of controlled substances known in the diversion world as the Holy Trinity. All of it spelled out in documents Naomi Scarson had read and had been tested on. Behind the scenes of every dispensing pharmacy in the country runs a second system the customer never sees. Distributors are required by federal law to monitor the ordering patterns of every pharmacy they supply. When a pharmacy's orders for a controlled substance exceed statistical thresholds calibrated to its size and patient base, the distributor is required to file a suspicious order report with the DEA. This is known as suspicious order monitoring. It runs continuously in the background on data submitted every month by every distributor operating in the United States. A pharmacy the size of Vantage, ordering Oxycodone 30 milligram immediate release tablets in the quantities Naomi Scarson was ordering, does not stay invisible in that system. It cannot. The system is designed to see exactly her. The first 3 years of Vantage Pharmacy's operation were unremarkable. Naomi Scarson filled prescriptions for antibiotics, hypertension medication, diabetes management, and the ordinary mix of controlled substances that any suburban Texas retail pharmacy processes in a week. Her monthly revenue in 2015 was approximately $41,000, and her personal draw, after payroll and lease and inventory, hovered around $92,000 a year. She hired one full-time pharmacy technician, a woman named Rosalind Vega, and one part-time cashier. She was, by every external measure, a small independent pharmacist making a living. Sometime in the early months of 2020, according to the government's later filings, Naomi Scarson was introduced through a mutual professional acquaintance to a man the indictment identified as co-conspirator number 1, later revealed to be a former medical office administrator named Dean Halverson. Halverson operated at that time what federal prosecutors would eventually describe as a regional network coordinating fraudulent prescription generation with cooperating pharmacies. The network had, on its rolls, 3 prescribers whose signatures appeared on the prescriptions the network moved. 2 were licensed physicians whose practices had, in the language of the indictment, degraded into full-time prescription writing. 1 was a nurse practitioner operating a standalone clinic in a converted dental office in Fort Worth. The pitch, when it came, was framed in the language of business: volume, cash flow, margin. Halverson explained the mechanics with a directness Scarson would later describe, in her sentencing memorandum, as, quote, professional rather than criminal in tone. Network patients would present at Vantage Pharmacy with prescriptions from the network's prescribers. The prescriptions would be for oxycodone, primarily 30 milligram immediate release tablets. The prescriptions would be paid for in cash, at a premium of approximately $80 per prescription above the standard cash pay rate. Scarson would fill them, log them, dispense them, and the paperwork would be, on its face, indistinguishable from any other cash prescription she processed. The first prescription in the operation was filled on the 22nd of April, 2020. It was written for 120 tablets of oxycodone 30 milligram immediate release for a patient whose listed address was in Beaumont, 197 miles from the pharmacy. The prescriber was one of the network's cooperating physicians. Naomi Scarson did not call the prescriber's office. She did not question the patient about the distance. She did not consult the patient's history. She counted the tablets, applied the label, took the cash, and closed the transaction. The customer was in and out of the pharmacy in 7 minutes. The volume escalated on a curve prosecutors would later describe as, quote, unmistakably deliberate. In May of 2020, Vantage filled 16 network prescriptions. In August, 43. By January of 2021, the number was over 100 a month. By the middle of 2022, network prescriptions accounted for more than 60% of Vantage Pharmacy's total oxycodone dispensing. Scarson's monthly cash deposits, traced later through financial forensics, moved from an average of $1,800 in 2019 to over $22,000 by mid-2022. The McKinney house was refinanced in the spring of 2021. A lake cabin at Cedar Creek was purchased outright, in cash, in November of that year. Emma Scarson was pulled from public middle school and enrolled in a private academy with tuition of $28,000 a year. Grant followed a year later. Rosalind Vega, the pharmacy technician, later told federal investigators that by 2022, she had stopped asking questions about the customers. She said, in her recorded statement, that she had raised the issue with Scarson twice, in 2021, and had been told, in her direct quote, that the prescriptions were legitimate, that the prescribers were licensed, and that the corresponding responsibility, quote, was hers, not yours. Vega did not report what she saw. She kept the job. She would later be granted immunity in exchange for her cooperation. The catalyst was not a tip. It was not a customer complaint, a competitor's phone call, or an overdose death traced back to a specific bottle. The catalyst was arithmetic. In the third quarter of 2023, an analyst at the DEA's Dallas Field Division, working through routinely reported distributor data under the Suspicious Order Monitoring Program, generated a ranked list of Texas independent retail pharmacies by oxycodone 30 milligram immediate release order volume, normalized to reported patient count and dispensing footprint. Vantage Pharmacy, a 1,400 square foot storefront with one pharmacist, one technician, and a patient profile of approximately 850 active patients, appeared in the top 10. It appeared, more specifically, at number 4. The 3 pharmacies above it were all subjects of active investigations already. The analyst pulled Vantage's 4-year ordering history. The pattern was, in the analyst's later testimony, unambiguous. Oxycodone 30 milligram IR orders had grown by approximately 1,800% between 2019 and 2022. The pharmacy was ordering, at peak, the same monthly volume of that specific formulation as chain stores serving patient bases 40 times its size. There was no documented therapeutic justification. There was no oncology referral pattern, no pain management specialist referral pattern, no hospice contract. There was, in the file, nothing that would explain the numbers except the numbers themselves. The diversion control investigation opened in October of 2023. It moved slowly, deliberately, in the way federal pill mill investigations move when the evidence is already in hand, and the objective is to build a case that no defendant will contest. Distributor records were subpoenaed and formally reviewed. Prescriber histories were cross-matched against Texas Prescription Monitoring Program data. Cooperating patient interviews were arranged through unrelated overdose cases where Vantage-dispensed bottles had been recovered from the scene. By March of 2024, DEA had assembled a picture of the operation detailed enough to justify the next step. In April of 2024, an undercover diversion investigator, working with a prescription obtained through a cooperating source in Halverson's network, walked into Vantage Pharmacy for the first time. The undercover prescription presented at Vantage on the 11th of April, 2024, carried every red flag cataloged in every DEA training module Naomi Scarson had ever completed. The prescriber was listed as one of the network's cooperating physicians. The patient's listed address was in Corpus Christi, 263 miles from the pharmacy. The prescription was for 180 tablets of Oxycodone 30 mg IR, a quantity at the upper range of any legitimate outpatient pain protocol. The patient presented with no medical documentation, no imaging, no referral note. The patient offered cash payment in advance. The pharmacist ran the license, printed the label, counted the tablets, and processed the transaction in 9 minutes and 41 seconds. The pharmacist was Naomi Scarson. The transaction was recorded on the pharmacy's own surveillance system, which the DEA had lawfully accessed as part of the investigation. Between April and July of 2024, DEA presented 6 additional undercover prescriptions at Vantage. Everyone was filled. Everyone carried the same red flag pattern. Everyone was documented, on video, at the counter, with Scarson personally handling the transaction on 5 of the 6 occasions. The federal search warrant was executed on the morning of the 6th of August, 2024. Agents seized dispensing records, DEA Form 222 order documentation, patient profiles, hard drives, backup drives, financial ledgers, and every safe and locked cabinet in the pharmacy and the McKinney residence. Financial forensics, run in parallel by IRS criminal investigation, traced $281,000 in unexplained cash deposits into Scarson's personal accounts across the 4-year period. Bank records identified the lake cabin purchase, the private school tuition transfers, and a pattern of structured cash deposits in amounts calibrated to stay under federal reporting thresholds. Halverson had been under separate investigation since 2022 and had been quietly cooperating with the government since December of 2023. His recorded conversations with Scarson, made under DEA supervision, contained direct discussion of the network's operation and Scarson's role in it, in her own voice, on tape. We are heading into the arrest and the courtroom next. If you have made it this far, you already know what kind of case this is. If you appreciate accountability coverage that walks through the actual evidence rather than the sensational version, subscribe now and turn on notifications. We do this every week, and there is a case in the queue that will make this one look small. The arrest was executed at 7:41 in the morning on the 6th of August, 2024, in the parking lot of the strip center where Vantage Pharmacy sat between a nail salon and a check-cashing storefront. Naomi Scarson had just arrived to open the pharmacy. She was wearing a knee-length navy dress, a white pharmacy coat draped over one arm, and holding a travel mug and a set of pharmacy keys when the 2 lead agents approached her at her vehicle. A 3rd agent was already at the storefront door with the search warrant. Agent Marcus Whitfield. Dr. Scarson, DEA, we need you to place the mug and the keys on the hood of the vehicle and step away. Scarson. What is this about? Whitfield. Ma'am, place the items on the hood and step away from the vehicle. Scarson. I have a right to know what this is about before I do anything. Whitfield. You are under arrest on a federal warrant. The charges will be read to you at the field office. Place the items on the hood, ma'am. Scarson. This is about the prescriptions, isn't it? I want to speak to my attorney. Whitfield. That is your right. Step to the vehicle, please. Hands behind your back. She placed the mug on the hood. She placed the keys next to the mug. The white pharmacy coat slid from her arm and landed on the pavement. She did not pick it up. She turned, put her hands behind her back, and did not speak again until she was inside the federal field office in downtown Dallas, where she requested counsel and invoked her right to remain silent. Those were the last words she spoke as a licensed pharmacist. The federal grand jury for the Northern District of Texas returned an indictment on the 19th of August, 2024. The charges were distribution of a controlled substance outside the usual course of professional practice, under 21 United States Code, Section 841, on multiple counts corresponding to specific undercover transactions and specific network prescriptions. Conspiracy to distribute a controlled substance, under 21 United States Code, Section 846, covering the full span of the operation, and maintaining a drug-involved premises, under 21 United States Code, Section 856, covering Vantage Pharmacy itself as the site of the offense. The indictment named Scarson alongside Halverson and the 3 prescribers already in federal custody. Her attorney was a Dallas white-collar defense litigator named Rebecca Constantine. The defense strategy, in the early filings, attempted to challenge the sufficiency of the government's evidence on the corresponding responsibility standard, arguing that the prescriptions had been facially valid and that Scarson had, in the language of the motion, quote, no actual knowledge of the network's fraudulent structure. The motion did not survive contact with the discovery. The government produced the Halverson recordings, the undercover transaction videos, the financial forensics report, and the 4-year distributor ordering dataset. The defense filed a change of plea in February of 2025. Naomi Scarson pleaded guilty on the 14th of March, 2025, to distribution of a controlled substance outside the usual course of professional practice and to conspiracy to distribute. The remaining count was dismissed under the plea agreement. Sentencing was scheduled for June. The sentencing hearing was held on the 23rd of June, 2025, before Judge Elena Marchetti in the federal courthouse in Dallas. The government's sentencing memorandum ran to 61 pages and included a public health harm analysis submitted by a DEA diversion specialist. The victim impact portion of the hearing included a statement from the sister of a 29-year-old man from Longview who had died of an oxycodone overdose in 2022, whose fatal bottle had been dispensed at Vantage Pharmacy on a prescription from one of the network's cooperating prescribers. She spoke for 11 minutes. Scarson did not look up from the table. Judge Marchetti's sentencing statement, delivered before she read the sentence, ran to nearly 7 minutes. In part, she said, quote, "This court is not sentencing a person who made a bad decision under pressure. This court is sentencing a licensed professional who spent 4 years operating a commercial enterprise inside a regulatory structure that depends at every point on her personal integrity to function. She had every training, every credential, every warning, and every piece of guidance the federal government provides. She had the corresponding responsibility. She did not lack the tools to meet it. She chose not to. 340,000 tablets moved through her hands into a distribution network she knew was fraudulent. This court will not describe that as a lapse. This court will describe it as what it is. The sentence was 144 months in federal prison. 12 years. Concurrent on both counts. Permanent revocation of her Texas pharmacist license by operation of the plea. Permanent surrender of her DEA registration. Forfeiture of the Cedar Creek Lake cabin of approximately $280,000 in identified operation proceeds and of the Vantage Pharmacy business itself. A permanent federal bar from any employment involving the handling of controlled substances. 3 years of supervised release to follow the custodial term. She was designated to Federal Correctional Institution Bryan, a low-security facility for women in Bryan, Texas, approximately 200 miles south of the pharmacy she had operated for 10 years. Her projected release date, with good time credit calculated at the statutory maximum, is in the spring of 2036. She will be 59 years old. Vantage Pharmacy's storefront in the Strip Center was closed the day of the search. The lease was terminated in October of 2024. The sign came down 2 weeks later. A tax preparation service opened in the space in February of 2025. This case was cold, deliberate, and documented in data the government held the entire time. But the case on your screen right now is on a different scale entirely. Click it.